Hi everyone, welcome to week 10 of your Law and Ethics for Pharmacy Technicians course. This week you do not have any new material, so you're not covering any chapters in the book this week. We've covered them all. So what I want you to make sure that you do this week is to go back and review and prepare for the final exam. So as you do that, keep in mind that there could be questions from any of the chapters in this particular final exam. However, in this little presentation that I'm giving, I'm going to kind of just go over the highlights since the midterm. So if you want to see some of the highlights from before the midterm, go to that week's From Your Instructor section and you can play that video. So we're going to just focus on those last three chapters on this particular video. So on this video, the last three chapters covered the Federal Controlled Substance Act of 1970. So there was a ton of material in this. We actually spent 2 weeks on this chapter. So there's a lot of different things for you to look over. Some of the things that I would recommend that you make sure you're familiar with, or maybe even print out and have near you when you're taking the exam, is the thing about the different schedules. So knowing what drugs fall into what schedules as far as abuse potential and things like that is going to be very important. This chart is another great example. So this kind of shows you some things that actually fall into those schedules, you know, why they're in them, and just, you know, some different things about them. This shows you a little bit about who needs to register and how that, you know, registration, what that registration means, what you are allowed to do and are not allowed to do. So that's another thing that you'll want to make sure that you're familiar with before starting the final exam. Lots of things about the different ways to record keep. So make sure you're familiar with the different ways of record keeping. These are the 3 approved ways. So make sure you're familiar with those. And then also knowing about DEA numbers. So make sure that you know how to use this checksum formula. If this was something you struggled with in previous weeks, if you're not sure how to do it, let me know. I'm happy to go through it with you and show you how to do it. But that's definitely something you're going to want to make sure you understand. Some of the other things from this chapter is the things that need to go on an actual prescription label. So make sure you know that information, another important topic. Then, like I said, we covered that chapter. We took 2 weeks to cover that chapter. So after that chapter, then we looked at the chapter that was about other pertinent federal legislation. So the things that were included in this were HIPAA. So HIPAA is probably going to be one of the things you're going to see the most of as far as from this chapter on your final exam. So make sure you understand the basic myths and facts that I presented in this particular week as far as the what HIPAA is all about. The other topic that was covered in this chapter was the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. So make sure you understand that and what that means to us and how it relates to over-the-counter items that are marketed as, you know, supplements, things like that. And then the final week was all about ethics and theory. So a lot of the things that you're going to see come up in this particular chapter were going to be things that, you know, maybe you can't necessarily put your finger on. It comes from, again, a more of a judgment type of thing. So what do you think about that type of thing? There are some history lessons in this particular chapter. So knowing the history of ethics and how we got to this point is very important. But again, you know, kind of knowing what you can and cannot do, what the patient expects, and what we can and cannot do for the patient is very important in this chapter. You know, this is kind of the guidance, so to speak, for any of those ethical issues. So as you're going through any ethical questions on the final, make sure you kind of refer back to this. In other words, you know, make sure that you're looking at all of these principles when you're making your decision on what choice to pick for your final exam. And last but not least, I just want to thank you all for taking the course. Please let me know if you have any problems or questions in the last week of the class. Also, remember that you can still turn in any missing work. So anything from previous weeks can be turned in. The only thing I cannot accept are discussion posts. Those are already closed. But you can do any test or any assignment and still turn those in. But make sure you do everything by the end of the day on Thursday, because if you don't do it by Thursday, I have to post grades Friday morning, so that I won't be able to get those in for you. Again, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and have a great week.